The next story is going to be brought to us by John Dahl, and it's a history of Safeway in Kenora. And I'm sure all of us have our own Safeway stories. Is Mill Davis here today? Millie's usually here. Are you here today, Mill? Oh, she didn't make it this year. But we all have Safeway stories, and mine was on that once a month when my mom would run out of groceries and she'd get us all on the bus, herd us all onto the bus, 7 of us, and one baby, she would go to Safeway to get groceries, and the deli ladies would make us up our bag lunch. And that was always a day to be the envy of your classmates, because we got not only a sandwich with meat in it, but also a donut, a fresh donut. So that was the day to worthy of a trade, because we used to trade lunch days. I'm sure everybody did. So anyway, let's welcome John Dahl to the stage, and he's going to tell us the history of Safeway in Kenora.
My name is John Dahl. I was an assistant manager for 7 years with Steve Borden, and later became store manager when I returned and managed the store for 18 years here in Kenora. First, I want to say thank you to the Common Ground Committee for inviting me to share the story. If you go into Safeway today and look above customer service, you're going to see the letters that say, "Serving Kenora since 1929. Safeway has a good long history here in Kenora. A little bit of background on Safeway itself. It came out of the US by 2 different grocers in 2 different areas of the country, each having their own string of stores. Sam Salick, who started with a single store in Los Angeles in 1912, and Marion Skagg, who also started with a single store in American Falls, Idaho in 1915. Both Salick and Skagg had similar philosophies and did something that was not common in the grocery business at that time. Their stores did not offer credit. A second thing that they did was to get their customers to pick up their own items rather than give the clerk a list. Both of these actions would allow them to lower their prices and have an advantage over the competitor. When Salick left in 1924, there was a contest to find a new name for the stores. The name Safeway was part of the larger slogan being used at that time: drive the safe way, buy the safe way. It refers to the fact that the store did not offer credit. Buying the safe way meant not using credit and not getting into debt. In 1929, Safeway opened 8 Canadian stores in Winnipeg. By the end of the year, there were 16 stores in Winnipeg. This is about the time that the Kenora Safeway store opened. Saying that, I couldn't find anything in the Minor and News to celebrate this. This is store 654 on Main Street. Some of you will recognize it. Typical, the picture is from the 50s though, it's not from the 1929. Typical of all Safeway stores of that era, the most distinguished architectural feature was the roof line, finished in a Spanish terracotta style, bookmarked by 2 decorative peaks that displayed the Safeway shield. All the Safeway stores of that era, they looked very similar. Grocery stores were typically 1,000 square feet, and customers only bought a few days' worth of food because of quick melting ice blocks were the standard source of home refrigeration. Safeway employee Norm Terrian shares some personal accounts of the time he worked at the store in the 50s. He talked about how crowded and how small the store was, and even though it had been remodeled to 4,000 square feet sometime during the 50s. Laddie Feddick and Charlie White were the store managers at that time. Norm, he told me he remembers cutting bananas off a banana stalk with a curved banana knife to give to the customers. He remembers wheeling dollies down Main Street, down to the airplane docks to be flown up to the different tourist camps. Another Safeway employee, Ken Sandstrom, he remembers how the delivery trucks, and they were a lot smaller than they are today, came down the back lane, backed into the store, and then they put up a conveyor belt, and then they pushed the items into the store. Julie Shesky, she called me last night. I can't be there. I'm so sorry. Julie Shesky, a longtime Safeway employee, remembers walking to the Main Street store for her mom to buy a couple of slices of ham to be used on her dad's sandwiches the next day. There'll be people here today that have their own memory of the Safeway store on Main Street. I'm sure many of you will recognize what became of the store after Safeway moved out. You can still see the terracotta roofline and the Safeway shield. Look at the Jackson's Bakery. Oh, it's moved in. On the picture outside, take a look. There's a Jackson's Bakery sign on the building right next door. And Jackson's, they have a long history with Kenora also, and they were in that building since the 1900s. And if you go to McTaggart's now and have a look, the Jackson sign is still there. This is 1956. Due to the need for larger stores, more refrigeration and freezers, more shelf space, and more parking, Safeway purchased land in Lakeside from the Western Lumber Company in 1955 and opened the store the following year. Grocery stores were moving to something called supermarkets. This is a great slide. It looks, it says a lot about Safeway at the time. This story ran the day before Safeway opened. New supermarket backs belief in Kenora's bright future. This is the opening day headline in the Miner and News. The afternoon of June 28th, 1956, the Lakeside Safeway store opens for business. The Miner and News describes how Joseph V. Frazier and his wife opened the store. Mayor Frazier was the grandfather to the Fraziers of Kenora today, who have always been connected to the store as customers and some as former employees. As a sidebar, you might find it interesting, and Mac, you'll appreciate this. Joseph Frazier later became the magistrate in Kenora and was known as Hanging Joe or Maximum Joe. And I sort of suspect no one wanted to appear before him. This is what the store looked like from the front. Very square. Didn't look very pretty, box-like. 2 doors that faced the lake without any windows. However, at the time, this was a state-of-the-art store, 14,700 square feet in size. New inside were self-service meat counters, 70 feet of freezers and dairy cases, along with 75 feet of produce counters that could be restocked from the back. The store opened and was described as the most ultra-modern store in northwestern Ontario and the largest of the Winnipeg division for that time. The manager that opened the new store, and this was now called store number 658, was Charlie White, who was moved from the smaller Main Street store. Laddie Feddick continued to manage the Main Street store at that time. The Safeway ads in the Miner and News indicated that as early as the late 60s, there were 2 stores in Kenora. When the Main Street store finally closed, McTaggart's, with only their first store in Fort Francis, they moved in a short time later. These were the Safeway docks, a shot from the back. What was very forward-thinking at that time were the 34 docks that were part of the Lakeside store, plus the parking for 130 cars. The $400,000 spent to build the store was part of a $1 million expansion that Safeway had going on in the Winnipeg district. Canada, Safeway was buying into a very bright future in Kenora. This isn't the Safeway store in Kenora, but it's similar to what it would have looked like that. This is either Portage or Brandon, so I just wanted a clearer picture for you. This is a great picture. This hung in Steve Borden's office for a while, and this would have been either sometime between 1956 and 63. What you can notice is in the background, you can see the Thistle Rink there. There's the Kenora Fish Market. There's no laundromat there. There's, look in the creek there on this side, lots of docks and just old docks. Steve Borden took over the operation of the Safeway store in Kenora in 1958. He will be remembered by most people in this room. Mr. Borden, he was highly regarded within the Safeway organization and worked tirelessly to build the business. And he was one of my best mentors. This is a 1956 ad. Former Safeway employee Ken Sandstrom remembers the Lakeside store as not being as busy as the company had hoped. One of the things you noticed in all the Safeway ads of this period was that they promoted a large number of parking space and the fact that mooring for boats was available. There was also this promotion that would offer 25 cents towards taking a cab back home from the store. Of course, Keewatin was such a long way away, and this helped pay for the ride. And the prices there, there's 40 box apples, $5.19. Wow. They're not quite the same now. This is another ad in 1956, a way to save on your turkey purchase at Christmas. Every time you bought something at the store, they would give you a 50-cent coupon, and then you use that towards your turkey. This has nothing to do with Safeway, but I just came across it. You can't read it. I don't think you can read it, so I'll read it. 7-Up is so pure, so wholesome, you can give this sparkling drink to baby without a qualm. Just read the ingredients on the bottle and you'll see why they're listed for your inspection, even though regulations do not require this. Anyone give their babies 7-Up in the 50s? You could have. During the 50s and 60s, it seemed like a lot of five and dime stores like Woolworths and other retailers had lunch counters. This Safeway store also had a lunch counter with 10 stools, anything to make shopping more convenient for the customers. I remember lots of employees talking about the great chili and soup that Kathy Hall made there, and the fact that a lot of the city employees would stop there for their lunch or coffee break afterwards. With the new larger size store, it allowed the company to move into a more of a non-food presence. The most unusual items that I found were in this picture. You can see the Sherwood hockey sticks back there, tied in with the bread and the cakes and that. And And then Ken Sandstrom says he remembers them selling Cooey single-shell shotguns and ammo here in the store. He says, well, were they locked up? No, they were just on display there. Okay. I suspect these items were just for our local store, not anywhere else in the country. In 1957, the union contract that existed was only 4 pages long. Very simple, very basic when you compare it to the contracts of today. Male employees started at a wage of 95 cents per hour, rising to $1.26 after 2 years. Female employees got 13 cents less per hour at 82 cents, and they rose to $1.10 after 2 years. Again, 16 cents less per hour than their male counterparts. At this time, cashiers were all females. Grocery clerks were all male. That is how it was until 25 years later, when the wages started to move closer together and you started to see females doing traditional male jobs and vice versa. This is 1962. They did some remodels to the front of the store. Safeway has always been a progressive company that made changes over the years. During the early 60s, many stores across the country were altered to reflect a more pleasing look. Gone was the square box-like store. In 1962, the Kenora Lakeside Safeway store is remodeled across the front to what is referred to as the marina style or gull wing style due to the shape of the roof line. Along with the curved roof line, there was now glass right across the entire front of the store. On each side of the front was stone or mosaic that was there with the familiar Safeway red and white S logo that we all know. This is in the winter, and you can see how the snow is just pushed into the creek. And I don't know if they would allow that today. Take a look at in the background. There's a house there. Keep that house in mind. This is my favorite slide. First of all, look how close Safeway is to the front of First Street South. It's right, there isn't a lot of room there. At the back of the store, there's a tall chimney. That was an incinerator that was used to burn all the wooden crates and cardboard boxes that product was shipped in. Mr. Borden always told me all the problems this created for the housewives up on the hill. Depending how the wind was blowing, the ashes would sometimes drift into the freshly washed clothes of the people on the hill. This would initiate an angry visit to the store manager, and for some reason they didn't care for having to redo their laundry, and the incinerator was removed at a later remodel. Across the street here you can see a wharf and showroom that was built by the Lake of the Woods Marina, which not only sold boat gas, it also repaired boat motors. Texaco Marina was also the dealer for Honda motorcycles at the time. Former Safeway produce manager Ken Sandstrom told me that he bought his first CB350 motorcycle right at that location. Beside the store, there's a bungalow. You can see the garage. Okay. This was where Phil and Beatrice Dufresne lived. They owned Phil's Esso on 2nd Street where Tags for Sports now is. These were the parents of Doug Dufresne of Dufresne Furniture. Doug said he never lived in the house. He had already moved on. And he told me the story that Safeway wanted that house to make additional parking. So they made a deal and Safeway paid for the house, and then Doug wrote them a letter. He says he proposed he would buy back the house for $1, but he would remove the house. So this was a win for Safeway and for Doug, so that's what happened. A Steinbach company was hired to move the house from that site. Doug remembers there was quite a crowd gathered as the house was moved over the Safeway Hill to its new location on Pump Avenue, just behind where Olson Honda is now. This is in the late 60s. And when the docks were first built in 1956, it was with cedar posts and rocks for cribbing. These docks were built by C.J. Edwards. These dock pictures may be from the mid-60s when the docks were being upgraded to replace the wooden 2x6s with concrete slabs and to use metal piles as the support. That's from the same time. Okay, we're getting into more modern times now. 1975, store 671 was built behind the Gull Wing Safeway store. Business dictated that more retail space was again needed, along with more parking. In the front was torn down to make this happen. Pool construction made application to the city of Kenora to remove store 658, the Gull Wing store, at the cost of $5,000 on February 12, 1975. The new store had opened 2 days earlier with a giant moving in sale. Just not sure where everyone parked at that time, but there was the new store in the back and then the old store in the front. Local contractor Nick Sertilitz is quoted in the Minor News as saying it would take his company 2 weeks to dismantle the store and that he would be able to salvage everything. I ran into Don McDougall he used to own Lake of the Woods Electric, and he said they did all the electrical in 671. And that he bought some of the material, some of the big timbers from Nick Sertilitz and built a camp with that. Today, if you go to the store, the parking lot, you'll see small depressions in the asphalt close to the road. And this is the foundation of the old 658 store. Safeway at this time was getting rid of all the Gull Wings and going to a clean, square look. The lunch counter disappeared, and an in-store bakery was added. Business was changing. Here is the logo has changed, so on this store. The docks have always been a big advantage to Safeway over the competition. What we found is that a lot of men would come shopping with their wives simply because it gave them a chance to drive their boat. Whether they came in or shopped, didn't matter. They would just sit outside and watch people and chat it up and just watch the traffic. If there were guests at the camp, for sure they would come along for the ride to go shopping by boat. And then I ask you, when's the last time that one of your guests wanted to go shopping with you? We're open Sunday now. Our Safeway store our Kenora store is the only store in North America that has docking facilities and became well known for that reason. When I started with the company, the Kenora store was used as the cover of the training handbook that was used right across Canada. It was used because it was different and unique to all the other Safeway stores in Canada. Visitors to Kenora would stand on the bridge and take pictures. People would stand in the parking lot and take shots of all the boats. When the store first opened, the boats were narrow and two boats would fit into each slip. During busy periods, you would see boats cruising back and forth, waiting for a spot to open up. As the boats got bigger and faster and wider, today there's only room for one boat per slip. Today you also see personal watercraft, you see kayaks, you see the stand-up paddle boards. Kids still fish off the docks, husbands still come shopping by boat. The docks have not always been fun and games, as they present special problems. Carts would roll into the lake with all the groceries. Funny, yes, not at the time. People, they did fall off the dock. Funny, yes, again, not at the time. You may remember Stan Pundy, a guy from the prairies. He was the one that came up with a milestone idea. He installed 2x4s around the edges of the dock. Carts didn't roll into the creek as often anymore. All those years, and Stan figures it out in 2 minutes. Just as a by the way, Mr. Pundy passed away this past winter. In the last 25 years, the store has continued to evolve with more than a few remodels. Always the plan was to squeeze out a little bit more retail space and make more shopping more convenient. The most unique remodel was when they expanded over the creek. The store is now almost 38,000 square feet, a giant leap from the first Main Street store of 4,000 square feet, but it is still small by today's Safeway standards. In closing, I just want to say that Safeway has always been an important part of Kenora's history economically and socially. Economically, by paying taxes, supporting too many local events to name, and by keeping people employed year-round. Socially, Safeway is still a general store. Just like in the old days, it's a meeting place where customers talk to their neighbors and friends. Safeway is the first place to see the returning snowbirds and summer residents. You always run into people you have not seen in a while and get caught up on news. Working in the store, you would see groups of people standing in the same aisle for half an hour or more, catching up. Many people to this day shop every single day, not because they need more groceries, but just simply to get out and see their friends, talk to the cashiers, talk to the staff at Safeway. The 1956 Daily Miner and News headline still holds true today. New supermarket backs belief in Safeway's bright future. It's modern. You can come by car or boat. Thank you for allowing me to share the story.